Hello and welcome to our food safety course. This training is designed to teach you how to safely prepare and handle food. Remember, our public's health is in your hands and it is important to prevent the spread of illness. Plan 30 to 40 minutes to complete this course. Contact us if you would like to test for a red card. From this you should understand and follow all requirements within New York State Sanitary Code Subpart 14.1. Identify food handling hazards which could result in illness. Expectations of worker health and hygiene. Importance of food care and maintenance of food temperatures. Equipment cleaning and sanitation. We also recommend visiting the New York State Department of Health's website for the New York State Sanitary Code and more useful resources. Let's get started.
In Part 1, The Importance of Food Safety, you'll find out how many Americans are affected by foodborne illness nationwide. We'll meet an environmental health inspector and discuss how cleanliness is a key factor in his work. Every kitchen requires a person in charge, and we will introduce a PIC to talk about their responsibilities. Then we'll focus on who is at risk, where we learn which segments of the population are most at risk for foodborne illness or injury, and how you can help keep them safe. Without proper food handling practices, the public becomes at risk for foodborne illness or injury from hazards in the foods they consume. Anyone who's had food poisoning or a foodborne illness or injury knows it's an unpleasant experience. But with estimates that about 48 million Americans get sick, with 128,000 hospitalized, and over 3,000 deaths annually from unsafe food nationwide, it's important to remember that following food safety rules saves lives.
We asked Zach Manning, an environmental health inspector for Lane County in Oregon, to tell us about his role in maintaining public health and what he looks for during his inspections of restaurants and food service facilities.
The most important thing is this restaurant clean?
If you have a dirty restaurant, that tells me a lot. That means there's miscommunication, the restaurant is unorganized, and there is a lack of effort being put forth. This all falls on the person in charge. Cleanliness is key to any restaurant and kitchen.
A dirty, disorganized kitchen is less likely to be following good food safety practices. The second thing Zach looks at is the competence of the person in charge.
A person in charge that is competent and knowledgeable is required in all restaurants at all times. If I do not have a knowledgeable PIC, it makes my job very challenging ensuring food safety.
A person in charge, or PIC, must be on the premises during all hours of operation and must know the food code and procedures used in the establishment. They should be able to answer all employee questions regarding food safety and provide training on how to perform jobs correctly.
As the person in charge, I'm responsible for all the food safety and sanitation in the department. I'm responsible for all the food that comes in, as well as all the meals that go out.
Food safety is everyone's business. If the public feels unsafe, the entire industry suffers. The general public needs to have trust that the establishments they patronize follow the basic food safety guidelines. But no matter what precautions are taken to ensure their safety, certain segments of the population are still more prone to becoming sick or experiencing worse than normal symptoms from foodborne illness. It's easy to remember how to identify highly susceptible populations by using the acronym YOPI. The Y stands for children younger than 5 years old. O is for older than 65 years of age. P is for pregnant women. And I stands for those that are immune compromised. meaning having a serious illness like cancer, HIV, diabetes,
or other conditions, as well as those prescribed certain medications.
Our compliance rules are really geared towards the susceptible populations, so by following basic food safety rules, we can mitigate any negative impact on those people at risk.
Because of people in the YOPI category, extra caution needs to be exercised when dealing with undercooked meats, raw oysters, undercooked eggs, sprouts, as well as unpasteurized milk or juices. Before we move on to part 2, let's recap some facts about the importance of food safety. In the U.S., there's an estimated 48 million cases of foodborne illness or injury, resulting in over 3,000 deaths annually. What is the most important factor in food safety? Cleanliness, according to our environmental health inspector, because an unclean restaurant or kitchen is often a sign of larger potential health hazards. A person in charge is required at all times to ensure proper food handling practices are being followed. We learned the acronym YOPI. That stands for young, old, pregnant, or immune compromised, and helps us remember the types of people who are most at risk for foodborne illness or injury. Finally, we listed some foods that require extra caution due to people in the YOPI category, including meats, oysters, eggs, sprouts, and unpasteurized juices. Welcome to Part 2, Health and Hygiene. What is biological contamination? How does food worker health affect safety? What should you do when you're sick? And what does good personal hygiene mean? Find the answers to these and other important food safety questions, including proper hand washing and when it's important, how to avoid bare hand contact with ready-to-eat foods, glove use, and how personal habits can affect food safety. Of all the types of hazards that can arise from unsafe food handling practices, biological contamination is the most common. Germs are everywhere, and some of them make us sick. It's those harmful pathogens that cause foodborne illness. Food worker health is one of the most important factors to preventing foodborne illness. It's simple. When you're sick, don't work with food. Germs can easily be spread if you're experiencing flu-like symptoms, jaundice, or other illness.
If you're sick, stay home. Remember the 24-hour rule. Vomiting, diarrhea, fever with sore throat, or jaundice, stay home for 24 hours from the last symptom.
If my employees are sick, I tell them to go home and come back when they feel better. It's not worth the risk.
Besides being aware of your own health and knowing that when you're sick, you pose a risk to the public, being aware of your personal hygiene is another aspect of avoiding contaminants in the food you serve. In fact, food workers with good personal hygiene save lives. Following proper hand washing protocol by washing your hands the right way and at the right times, keeping fingernails trimmed for easier cleaning, wearing hair restraints and proper work clothing, and covering cuts and burns with bandages and gloves, in addition to not working while sick. These are all ways that hygiene prevents the spread of germs in the kitchen. Hand washing is something we all learned at a very young age. But if you want to work as a food handler, it's important to relearn this task in the proper way that complies with the health department guidelines. But first, let's review when it's important to wash up. Wash your hands throughout the day, even when hands look clean, to keep germs off your body and the food you prepare. Always wash before you begin food preparation, or if you've been contaminated by exposure to potential germs. Contamination can be caused by using the bathroom, touching one's face or nose, handling raw meat, fish, or poultry, sneezing, coughing, or blowing one's nose, handling garbage or dirty dishes, handling animals or using chemicals, or after taking a break, eating, or smoking. If you aren't sure if a wash is necessary, wash anyway, just to be safe. Proper hand washing is a 6-step process that requires a hand washing sink with hot and cold running water, soap, and paper towels or other single-use drying method. Step 1. Get hands wet to help the soap work. Step 2. Apply soap and scrub. Remember to pay attention to your entire hand when washing. Step 3. Rub your hands for a full 20 seconds. This is how long it takes for soap to kill germs. Step 4. Scrub the backs of your hands and between your fingers, a common breeding ground for bacteria. Scrub your forearms. They frequently touch food prep surfaces, and utensils. Step 5. Rinse hands to send the soap suds and germs down the drain. Rinse for about 5 seconds to fully remove the soap. Step 6. After rinsing, dry hands and forearms with disposable paper towels or an air blower. Don't use cloth towels or dish rags, which can stay damp and recontaminate your hands. It's important to note that hand sanitizers may be helpful on clean hands, but are not substitutes for hand washing. In fact, in some cases, double hand washing may be required. Always remember that hand washing is the most important food safety tool to get rid of the germs that make people ill. When in doubt, wash. But germs can remain on your hands even after washing. That's why it's important to prevent bare hand contact with ready-to-eat food by using utensils such as tongs, scoops, deli papers, or single-use gloves.
Focus on minimizing bare hand contact. Utensils, tongs, tissue paper, these are all acceptable when handling ready-to-eat foods. So you don't need to glove up as often as you think. When you do use gloves, remember it is required to wash your hands before and sometimes after proper glove use.
Ready-to-eat foods are those served without additional washing or cooking to remove germs. They include washed produce that's eaten raw, such as sliced fruit, salads, and garnishes. Foods that will not be cooked, such as sandwiches, sushi, and deli salads. Bakery or bread items, such as breads, cakes, pies, and tortilla chips. Ice that may be used in drinks, or foods that have already been cooked. Gloves can be tricky because if a food handler thinks they're using gloves correctly and they aren't, they can put the public at an increased risk by contamination. Gloves are there to protect food from germs, not your hands from the food. So remember to change them often and never wash or reuse them, especially between working with raw and ready-to-eat food. When you're done with them, be sure they go in the trash and wash your hands afterwards. When it comes to health and hygiene, as a defense against foodborne illness, it's important to realize that personal habits affect food safety. You may not eat, drink, or use any type of tobacco in food prep areas. This is to prevent spills and reduce contamination. Use hair restraints that are intended to keep hands out of hair and hair out of food. Hair must always be restrained when working around food or in food prep areas. Hair restraints include hairnets, barrettes, ponytail holders, and tight braids. Long beards must also be restrained. Fingernails must be trimmed for easier cleaning. If nail polish or artificial nails are worn, you must wear gloves when preparing all foods, not just ready-to-eat foods. Rings, watches, bracelets, and all other jewelry on arms or hands must be removed during food preparation. Wedding rings may be worn if they're covered with a glove when the food worker is preparing food. Personal items like medicine, coats, and purses must be stored away from food, dishes, and linens.
Let's review Part 2, Health and Hygiene. We learned that biological contamination is caused by germs on our bodies and in our environment, and that if you are sick, don't come to work. Follow the 24-hour rule and check in with your person in charge about your symptoms. Follow proper hand washing steps at the correct times to avoid biological contamination. Avoid bare hand contact with ready-to-eat foods. Use gloves to protect food, not your hands, and wash before and after glove use. Be aware of your own personal habits and hygiene as a defense against foodborne illness. In the next segment, we'll explain temperature control, including the danger zone, hot and cold holding, proper cooking temperatures, thawing, and cooling food. Foods must be cooked and held at correct temperatures, and cooks must use a metal stem or digital thermometer to ensure that meat, poultry, seafood, and other cooked foods reach safe minimum internal temperatures.
Obviously, the only way to be sure that you've cooked something to the right temperature is with a probe thermometer.
Remember, always hold cold foods at 41 degrees Fahrenheit or less. Always hold hot foods at 135 degrees Fahrenheit or above. Most bacteria do not grow in very hot or cold temperatures. The danger zone in which bacteria can grow rapidly is between 41 degrees Fahrenheit and 135 degrees Fahrenheit. Potentially hazardous foods may not be at room temperature for more than 2 hours while being prepared. When you're working with food, it's key to work quickly in small batches. Keep the rest of the food you're not working with hot or cold, either below 41 degrees if it's cold, or above 135 degrees if it's hot food. If food has been left at room temperature for an unknown amount of time, throw it away. It could be unsafe to eat. Keeping hot foods hot, also known as hot holding, is important because cooking in itself does not kill all bacteria, and bacteria resumes growth if foods are allowed to drop into the temperature danger zone. To ensure temperature safety, steam tables, soup warmers, and other hot holding units must be turned on and heated up before hot food is put into them. Use thermometers to check the temperature of the food, and be sure to cover pans and stir food often to distribute heat evenly. And remember to never mix cold foods with cooked foods. Temperature control is a strong defense against foodborne illness and injury, and cooking meats is no exception. The guidelines for cooking meat are crucial to keeping customers healthy. Know the proper cooking temperatures for each type of meat, and check your temperatures with the appropriate thermometer. But depending on the type of meat you're serving, safe temperatures can vary. Temperature control is also vital when it comes to handling cold foods. When practicing cold holding, always be mindful of the danger zone and keep cold foods at 41 degrees Fahrenheit or colder. Foods can be kept in a refrigerator, ice, or other approved methods to keep bacteria from growing. When using ice to keep food cold, the ice must surround the container to the top level of the food.
When you're thawing food, it's time to think about the danger zone again.
Which would be any time the food is above 41 degrees. Acceptable methods of safely thawing frozen foods include: in the refrigerator, put frozen foods in the refrigerator until thawed. This is the slowest and safest method. Thaw raw meats on the bottom shelf or in a container to avoid cross-contamination with other foods. Under cold running water, keep the food covered in cold 70 degrees Fahrenheit or colder, running water until it's thawed. Or you may thaw as part of the cooking process or in the microwave for certain foods. Small items, such as frozen burritos, may be thawed while they cook.
In addition to hot and cold holding, proper cooking temperature, and the correct thawing techniques, special care must be taken when cooling unserved leftovers or storing freshly cooked food, because bacteria can form quickly as food transitions through the temperature danger zone.
It goes back to the danger zone. You want to move food through the danger zone as quickly as possible. For instance, you make some hot food and you want to reserve it the next day. Your goal is to safely cool the food from 135 degrees to below 41. The key to cooling food safely is in 2 phases. First, get the food from 135 to 71 in 2 hours. Second, cool food from 71 to below 41 degrees within 4 hours.
Improper cooling is a leading contributor to foodborne illness.
we can't stress enough how important it is to please take cooling seriously. Move the food through the danger zone as quick as possible, because bacteria can produce toxins that are not destroyed by reheating temperatures. Cooling food is often the riskiest step in food preparation.
Here's a quick outline on the facts of temperature control. The danger zone is between 41 degrees Fahrenheit and 135 degrees Fahrenheit. Food must not remain in the danger zone for longer than 2 hours. Hold cold foods at 41 degrees Fahrenheit or less. Hold hot foods at 135 degrees Fahrenheit or higher. Know the proper cooking temperatures for meats, poultry, and seafood, and use the correct probe thermometer. Follow the steps for safe thawing and cooling of food.
Time now for a closer look at what we just learned. So far, we've covered 2 of the top 3 defenses against foodborne illness and injury. We showed you how health and hygiene provide a first line of protection from spreading contaminants in the food you serve. We outlined aspects of temperature control designed to keep food out of the danger zone and free from potential hazards.
In Part 4, Preventing Cross-Contamination, you'll learn its causes and how to avoid this potentially dangerous problem.
Avoiding cross-contamination is one of the most important keys in a kitchen.
It's critical to avoid cross-contamination. Always keep your raw meat, like chicken, separate from your ready-to-eat foods, like vegetables.
Cross-contamination is the spread of bacteria from raw meat to other foods. This happens when blood or juice from raw chicken or other meat gets onto a counter, cutting board, utensils, or hands. The bacteria present can spread to other food. It's very important to keep raw meat away from other food. Always wash your hands after handling raw meat. Food contact surfaces that touch raw meat must be washed and sanitized. Never prepare raw meat in areas near other foods. Use one cutting board for fresh produce and a separate one for raw meat, poultry, and seafood. Never place cooked food on a surface that has previously held raw meat, poultry, seafood, or eggs. Cooked food can become infected by the bacteria these other foods harbor. Storage is another place where cross-contamination can occur. Store raw foods on shelves below ready-to-eat foods to minimize contamination from accidental drips or other contact. Store meat with a higher cooking temperature, like chicken, below meat with a lower cooking temperature, like fish.
In my kitchen, every employee follows safety steps to avoid cross-contamination.
Here's what we learned about cross-contamination. It's caused by bacteria in raw meat spreading to other foods. Always keep vegetables and meat separate. Always wash your hands after handling raw meat. Use separate cutting boards for meats and vegetables. Store raw foods on shelves below ready-to-eat foods. Keep foods with a higher cooking temperature, like chicken, below foods with a lower cooking temperature, like beef. Now that you know how to avoid cross-contamination, let's take a closer look at cleaning and sanitizing in Part 5. Some crucial points in this segment include the difference between cleaning and sanitizing and why it's important, washing dishes by hand and using a commercial dishwasher.
Cleaning and sanitizing are not the same. Cleaning uses soap and water to remove dirt and food from surfaces, while sanitizing uses chemicals or heat to kill germs. Remember that surfaces that look clean may still have germs that you cannot see. Sanitizing reduces these germs to safer levels. Food contact surfaces should be washed, rinsed, and sanitized after each use to remove germs that can cause illness. Chemical sanitizers must be mixed following the label's directions, and soap should never be added to sanitizers. Use test strips to make sure the sanitizer is not too strong or too weak. Change the sanitizing solution often because grease, dirt, and food particles make the sanitizer less effective. Store wiping cloths in clean sanitizer. If you're washing dishes by hand, all dishes and food contact surfaces must be washed, rinsed, and sanitized between uses. The procedure for washing dishes by hand is as follows. First, clean and sanitize the sink. Then, scrape leftover food into the garbage. Wash dishes in hot, soapy water in the first sink and rinse dishes with clean, hot water in the second sink. Sanitize by soaking the dishes in the third sink filled with warm water and an approved sanitizer. Always air dry dishes. Towels can breed bacteria if left wet. You may have a mechanical dishwasher that will wash, rinse, and sanitize the dishes. You need to know that the dishes are reaching correct temperatures for sanitization. So temperature gauges and sanitizer levels must be monitored. If you have any questions, speak with your person in charge about proper dishwasher operations. Many of the same basic practices for dishwasher use at home apply to commercial dishwashers, yet don't be fooled, the stakes are high to get this right. To get the cleanest dishes, start by scraping leftover food from the dishes, then stack dishes in dish racks. Do not stack dishes on top of each other, as this will not allow water to circulate properly. To keep them from filling with water and dirt, glasses, cups, and bowls should be turned upside down in the dishwasher. Plates and flatware should be stood up edgewise. Dishes should be allowed to air dry for 1 to 2 minutes before removing from racks. Just like towel drying is not acceptable for hand washing, it's also not used for dishwashing. Towel drying could contaminate the dishes. Inspect all items coming out of the dishwasher. Are there spots or stains? Are all dishes and flatware clean and free of food? No soap should remain on any dishes. Chipped or cracked dishware must be removed from service. After dishes are clean and dry, handle and store them correctly to minimize possible contamination. Don't touch the surface of any glasses or plates that a guest's mouth will touch. Cups, bowls, pots, pans, etc. must be stored upside down. Handle silverware and other utensils by the handles only. Always store kitchen utensils at least 6 inches off the floor in clean, dry areas.
Here are the facts on cleaning and sanitizing. Cleaning and sanitizing are different. Cleaning uses soap and water, while sanitizing uses chemicals or heat to kill germs. Surfaces that look clean can still have germs. Sanitizing reduces these germs to safer levels. Food contact surfaces should be washed, rinsed, and sanitized between each use. Follow the label directions on all sanitizers. Never add soap to sanitizer. If washing dishes by hand, use the 3-sink method to wash, rinse, and sanitize dishes. Store bowls upside down and store utensils and dishes at least 6 inches off the ground. Never touch a part of a dish or utensil that a guest's mouth might touch. In this short presentation, Safe Thermometer Use, we will supplement the information learned in our basic food safety series. Foods must be cooked and held at correct temperatures, and cooks must use a metal stem or digital thermometer to ensure that meat, poultry, seafood, and other cooked foods reach safe minimum internal temperatures. In the basic food safety series, we focused on temperature control and understanding the temperature danger zone. In this segment, we will expand your knowledge of temperature control by discussing thermometer use in depth.
Among all the tools used in food service, the thermometer provides the best indication of food temperature safety. Metal stem or dial thermometers are commonly used in food service. They work well for taking temps in thick food when used properly. When using a dial thermometer or similar device, the stem must be pushed several inches into food and left in for at least 20 seconds. Due to depth required for accuracy, it should not be used for thin foods such as hamburger patties. Digital thermometers have digital numbers rather than a dial and are easy to read, quick, and better for measuring temperatures in thin foods. Use a food thermometer whenever you prepare hamburgers, poultry, roasts, chops, egg casseroles, meatloaves, and other combination dishes. Food thermometers should be capable of measuring temps from 0 degrees Fahrenheit to 220 degrees Fahrenheit. Check the accuracy of a thermometer by putting the sensor in a cup of crushed ice and water. It should read 32 degrees Fahrenheit. If it doesn't show that temp, it should be adjusted or replaced. Calibrate all thermometers periodically following manufacturer's directions. An unsanitized thermometer is a food safety hazard rather than a preventive tool. Clean and sanitize whenever a thermometer probe has been used, set down on an unsanitized surface, or otherwise contaminated. When inserting into a poultry breast, insert from the side. This is easier to read and more accurate than when inserted from the top. Dial thermometers should have the stem inserted straight into the food or at an angle about 2 inches into the thickest part of the food without touching bone or fat. The stem must be pushed several inches into the food and left in for at least 20 seconds. Digital thermometer stems should be inserted about a ½ inch or less straight into the center of the thickest part of food or at an angle without touching bone or fat. The temperature takes 5 seconds to appear.
Here is a review of the key points of proper thermometer use. Thermometers are the best way to indicate if a food is safe to eat. Know the proper internal cooking temperatures for hamburgers, poultry, roasts, chops, egg casseroles, meatloaves, and other combination dishes. There are 2 types of probe thermometers, dial and digital. Metal stem or dial thermometers are best used for measuring the heat of thick foods. Digital thermometers are easy to read, quick, and better for measuring temperatures in thin foods. Know the proper techniques for each type of thermometer. Dial thermometers measure 2 inches deep for 20 seconds, and digital thermometers measure a ½ inch deep for 5 seconds. Calibrate all thermometers periodically. Never use a used or dirty thermometer, as it is a food safety hazard. Always wash and sanitize thermometers between uses. For more information on food safety, including proper cook temperatures, check out our 6-part series on basic food safety and our other supplemental videos. And remember, to be safe, it saves lives. In the Basic Food Handlers video series, we emphasize the importance of cooling hot foods correctly and moving them through the temperature danger zone as quickly as possible. In this supplemental video, we will demonstrate the ice bath technique for bringing foods down to safe temperatures.
There are 2 requirements to this method. The first requirement is that food must cool to 70 degrees Fahrenheit in 2 hours. This must happen first and foremost. The other requirement, once food has reached 70 degrees, is that food must be finished cooling from 70 to 41 degrees Fahrenheit in 4 hours, 6 hours total. The ice bath is a common technique used in the time and temperature monitored method, especially for large batches of food. After closing the drain in the sink, place the pot of hot food in the sink and fill the sink with ice up to the level of the food in the pot. Then, add cold water to the ice. Be sure to stir the food often.
make sure it cools down to 70 degrees Fahrenheit in 2 hours. Add more ice as the ice melts, and finish cooling the food to 41 degrees Fahrenheit within 4 hours. Once the food is at 41 degrees Fahrenheit, cover it and put it in the refrigerator.
Using the ice bath technique can greatly reduce the risk posed to the public. For more information on temperature control, check out our 6-part series on basic food safety and our other supplemental videos. And remember to be safe. It saves lives.
As we near the end of our presentation, let's review what we've learned with what we consider to be the key points to safe food handling, known as the Food Workers' Top 10. First off, only work if you're healthy. If you're sick, don't work with food. Second, wash your hands thoroughly and often. Number 3, minimize bare hand contact with ready-to-eat foods. 4, keep food hot, above 135 degrees Fahrenheit, or cold, below 41 degrees Fahrenheit. 5, cook foods to proper temperatures before serving. 6, cool hot food as quickly as possible. Improper cooling is a leading contributor to foodborne illness. 7, keep raw meat away from other foods. 8th on the list, always follow these 4 steps in order. Wash, rinse, sanitize, air dry. Next, remember to keep food prep areas and utensils clean and sanitized. Last but not least, always ask your person in charge any questions you have on food safety. Thank you for joining us, and remember to be safe. It saves lives.
This concludes the food safety course. Please contact us with any questions or comments. We are here to help.